You're listening to Central's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and WFHR.com, and with our friends at RCCA Media, because it's time for our monthly update on everything in the city of Wisconsin Rapids. Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink is here for the entire hour, and we'll open up the phone lines during the show for you to bring issues of concern to the mayor. Just a quick reminder, I know it's the election season, and the mayor is doing what every mayor has done since a long time. I've interviewed a lot of different mayors. Okay. And this, let's keep the politics out of it. We want to try and there will be a time when we'll do a forum or broadcast forums, but this is the opportunity for the mayor to answer concerns and talk about the issues of Wisconsin Rapids. Okay, so we're going to keep the politics out of it, just like okay, but we open up the phone lines at 715-424-2600, pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone, and with that, we welcome Mayor Vruwink. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Carl.
I know,
to our listeners.
I know in our city, they say when you've gone through a tornado, you look at storms differently from here on out, and I know, since that great flood before you were mayor, everybody along the river takes things a little differently, and with all the rain that we had. Any problems with the city infrastructure that you know of from all the heavy rain?
The only notification that just went out was that bike paths in the Bulls Creek boat landing are closed due to the high water. Obviously, we want people to exercise good. But as you say, we get the flow forecasts from Verso on a regular basis as to the prediction and where things are at. And as our understanding is that we'll crest this sometime in the next 12 hours. So at this point, it's on the downhill slide of the flow forecast anyway. So that's good news. But of course, we have conversations internally about emergency response and situations that may arise, and flooding is obviously one that we've experienced and learned from, and have good practice to apply our techniques. But no, nothing beyond that at this point.
Okay. So, but anyway, be careful if you're down by the river. Just be aware. It will gradually recede throughout the day. Let's talk about first off some news from Wood County. Wood County Board yesterday approved the purchase of what everybody used to call the consolidated building or the main office building. I don't know what was the last title for it, but you got a tenant downtown. Wood County is purchasing that huge office complex. Your thoughts about that?
Right. I was at the county board meeting yesterday. Very short window of sort of public comment. It moved very quickly. In fact, 5 days, I think, was really when it became public last Thursday. The county board took swift action yesterday unanimously in a very interesting transaction to acquire the building, but to lease the land beneath the building and to lease the parking lot to the west of the property from the Mead Witter Foundation, who acquired it earlier this last year. It's a standpoint, I was a little bit disappointed the county didn't seek input or seek feedback from the city, not so much directly related to its opportunity across from the courthouse that we're pursuing with our redevelopment, but just to understand the impact. The county is a tenant of ours in the Centralia Center with their economic support department, so they're a tenant there. They've got a lease with the city that at some point expire, and we don't expect them to renew it now. So there will be some financial impact to the city taxpayers at that point. But then, we expect that the county as a governmental entity and unit, that they don't pay property taxes, and currently the administrative office building is on the tax rolls. So that tax shift will occur to residential taxpayers unless some fashion we can come to terms on maybe an agreement there, so we're not having to spread that tax burden over existing residential and commercial and industrial taxpayers throughout the city. So, but, on the positive side, folks will be moving out of Centralia, be moving out of the courthouse at some point, and possibly moving out of the hospital as well as 12th Street, the former Human Services building over there. So there will be some net gain of people downtown, which of course bodes well for our revitalization efforts and plans to bring more people downtown. Of course, when you get more bodies working during the workday, they consume services, whether it's restaurant or any other services that are in the vicinity down there. And then, as we pursue trying to attract and create housing units in the downtown, we know the trends are that young professionals, young workers like to live in downtown, like to live near services, maybe near work and other things. So, all in all, occupancy of the river block is a tremendous thing. Personally, it formerly housed a lot more employees then we'll be moving in there in the near future, but I'm hopeful that we can continue to come to some agreement about maybe other opportunities that still exist. It's a 30-year with a 5-year option at the end of it, and ultimately the property owner desires that the building be torn down. So at the end of that lease, the river block will no longer be standing. So as a young resident and taxpayer, I'm concerned because the county's going to have to make yet another decision at that point of what to do. So while they've dealt with their space needs today and for the foreseeable future, there will, of course, be yet another decision that will have to come at the county board level at that point in the future. So, that's, I guess, sort of the deal in a nutshell from the city's perspective.
Okay. Given that, how will that fit or affect your strategy for the downtown?
Sure. You're referring probably to the Market Street.
Market Street
and Jackson Street corridor there. What we're referring to is somewhat of the triangle redevelopment. Well, we had at last understanding, the county was interested in partnering on a redevelopment. Of course, when these discussions were done in closed session and not, to our knowledge, related to the river block negotiation, we had continued to pursue our property acquisition. In fact, the council took action last night to acquire what is formerly known as the Good Time Charlie's property, and we believe that we'll have a deal here possibly yet today on that property. So we're going to continue to pursue the purchase of that property. Our strategy remains the same, that it's blighted. In some cases, it's definitely underutilized, and there's some contamination in some of the parcels, that city action is necessary for us to realize a much larger redevelopment of that site. So we're going to continue to buy our property. We're now to a point with the Good Time Charlie's parcels now under city control, that we control a substantial amount of that 2-point-some-odd acres there. And we're going to continue to negotiate with the other property owners as well. But at this point, we pursue redevelopment. And so in the coming months, in the first quarter of next year, we're going to formalize more of our planning there to determine, what is our strategy, how do we want to engage developers and invite developers for their proposals and their ideas about redevelopment. At the same time, the city is also undergoing a housing study. And so I'm going to put a plug in for our listeners. An important part of economy is to make sure you've got adequate and sufficient housing, and to make sure that our housing options are representative of all those that desire to seek work in a place. Well, it's safe to say that the majority of the city housing stock is on the aged end of the spectrum. It's aging as people maybe move out and move into senior housing or move out of the area for if they're retiring possibly. A lot of those homes will require major upgrades and renovations to bring them more to current standards. And as I mentioned with the downtown housing element, we want to quantify the demand and the interest for downtown housing. And it's not just young professionals and young workers. There's a whole spectrum of folks that are deciding to move downtown because of walkability and being able to be close to those services. element of senior housing. We continue to see interest from developers on senior housing. We talked about the Hilltop Grand project that's occurring just on the 20 acres behind Home Depot. Very large, kind of a nice standard of development happening there for senior housing. And as our demographics and population continue to age, of course we're going to have a higher need for housing. So we're wanting to quantify that whole spectrum from the working professionals to the seniors as well as in between. And then not only do we want city feedback and resident feedback, we want non-resident feedback
the
as
whole
well.
region.
You bet. So those seeking employment maybe in other communities but living in our community, as well as those that work here but don't live here. We want to know from them the amenities that folks wish to have in a community in which they live. What are the amenities that are here that keep them here or made them buy a home here maybe? And then what are the amenities that don't exist that maybe attribute to why they're not living here but they're working here, for example? And so we're hoping that as a result of this survey and this study of resident preferences related to housing, that we'll have a clear picture on our plan of attack. The city has historically participated in some subdivision development, just down 25th Avenue, for example, on the Bulls Circle redevelopment that the city led that redevelopment. And so we're hearing from residents in some areas that they'd like to see the city possibly pursue another subdivision development in different parts of the community.
We should mention the assessment questionnaire can be accessed online at wisrapidshousingstudy.questionpro.com. Participants will be entered into a drawing for a local business gift card who fill it out, and paper copies are available at City Hall, the McMillan Memorial Library, the Aging and Disability Resource Center, River Cities Community Access, the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce office, Miss-State Technical College, and the village and town halls of Grand Rapids, Nakusa, Port Edwards, and Barron.
Yeah.
So we want
just about everywhere, right?
Right, yeah.
I don't think there's anybody left out. The other piece to that is area employers. We want to hear from area employers, maybe particularly HR professionals, to understand in their human resources area of their recruitment or retention of employees. The challenge has been specific to housing and amenities. If you've, we hear that employers make offers, extend offers to folks, and they decline them because of certain reasons. We want to know those things so we can effectively prioritize our efforts to make sure that we're pursuing some of these amenities that people want in a community in which they may live or relocate to. So, you listed a whole list of places to get the survey. Of course, we want people to do it online. It's on almost every one of those entities' websites. It takes about 10 minutes to complete, so it's not a real long survey, but find time for 10 minutes. Paper City Savings has graciously agreed to provide gift cards, so we're going to raffle off or select winners for gift cards at the end of the survey. So I believe there's a number of them available that people will buy for. So it's a good incentive to participate. Sure. Of course, we shouldn't always have to incent, but it's another reason for people to give 10 minutes to give us their insight on our city's housing situation.
And it's not that hard. I've looked at the survey, and it's not anything hard. I mean, you just give your answer the questions the way you feel you want to answer them.
Right. So that'll be available until early January, just after the holidays. We know it's difficult to try to get people's attention right now, but we're going to keep it into early January, and we're looking for nearly 1,000 participants, 900 or so, which would give us a nice sample size of our region and our community. And so far, I think we're well over 200 responses. Really good response from people thus far, and so we hope that continues over the next couple of weeks.
You mentioned Good Time Charlie's. I used to know it as the old Labor Temple.
That's right, yeah.
In fact, that's where Pam and I had our wedding reception.
Right?
Upstairs.
Okay.
Upstairs of that building.
Yeah, 111 East Jackson is the property.
What's going to happen with, are you planning to, if as you acquire it, or you get tear it down? Or what's going to happen?
Well, part of our planning effort is as we engage with developers and we ask for their proposals of what they would develop, because this is not going to be a city-led sort of development. Okay. We're going to obviously have site control, and the idea with site control is you can expect a certain level of redevelopment to occur, a certain standard, and as part of that process, well, be multiple phases because the site is fairly large, that there may be a phased development that as the market conditions necessitate certain development, there may be some elements to that. So we know that corner, though, if folks remember being in the second floor in the offices of the Labor Temple, there are unique views and a unique vista to our community. Obviously, the views of the river and the parklands is very unique to our community in that site. So from a housing standpoint or even office, that site, or that particular footprint that we're talking about with the 111 East Jackson Labor Temple site, that there could be the higher need to develop and start there. If the county has obviously met their needs from a space needs, we may not have to pursue development directly facing the court at the time. So there's a whole variety of directions we can take the development, but at this point, we will plan on taking that building down long term. We don't think that a developer will want to invest the amount of money to convert that property. Folks remember it's a very soundly constructed building. It's mostly reinforced concrete, and so it's going to be a feat to tear that one down. But as far as the other buildings, we actually issued a salvage request for proposals. So folks in the community that wish to salvage pieces or property from those two other buildings, the former USDA and the former Spath Accounting building, both we have an open sort of request to people that are interested in salvaging doors and any sort of property that's in those buildings, because we really feel that if we can get the property that's worth something to somebody out of the buildings, it's less for us to demolish and landfill. I don't want to landfill as little as possible of those two buildings. So folks can contact the city to learn about that salvage call out. Haven't had a strong interest from folks on that, but we're considering options, and we may tweak that option for folks that we may offer, for example, on a given day or a weekend, folks to come in and tell us what they think it's worth, or even just to take the property that's in those buildings.
What kind of interest are you getting from developers in this area? Have you had developers contacting the city? Okay, I'm interested. We're interested in doing there. Keep us posted.
Yeah, there's been a few, mostly central Wisconsin developers. They're not developers from the city. Some local developers in the city have said, well, yeah, let's continue to talk as the city decides what they want to do. Of course, the property acquisition process was one that, we weren't quite certain what we would acquire and may not acquire in the future yet. But Wausau had just issued RFPs for their waterfront redevelopment now, much more larger scale than what we're talking, in the tens of millions of dollars. And they received a couple of local developers, of which are on our list to engage with. I think they did mixed use, just like we're pursuing and conceptually thinking about here, that you'd have units probably on the upper levels, as well as some commercial office space, depending on what the market sort of conditions look like, and then the bottom floors of retail and service type oriented businesses, entertainment, bars, restaurants, those types of things. So that's kind of where that development stands. But yeah, we do plan on engaging with those developers. I think Wausau received 3 really strong proposals on their Riverfront call out just in the last number of months, and so we've watched that project closely, because while they're further north, a little bit larger community, but it's very much the similar aspects to development that we're looking at here. So it was a good flavor for us to say, well, what's the market appetite in the area for people to develop and on those sites.
Idea of the downtown development, and there's a lot of talk. I want to get the accurate information to the folks. So whether, and especially for folks that might want to run for alderperson in the spring or whatever office, so that we are all talking apples and apples, not apples, oranges. What? Because I see in the paper a $9 million riverfront development.
Sure.
And it made it sound like the city. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but is it not, most of that's going to be privately generated?
Right.
Isn't that what this whole study was, to generate interest, developers, foundations, et cetera, et cetera? Can we get a little tutorial on what's the dream?
Right. And how is it all connected? Maybe is probably another question people are. So we pursued the Riverfront Development Design Project for a couple of reasons. The first of which was we've got a river wall that was built by the Army Corps 100 years ago. That's an urban section of the river formerly where buildings stood, with Veterans Park, and then the wall extends up to First Street past Mead Rapids View Park. And as we know, over the years of flooding and a lot of water hitting that wall, we didn't quite have a good handle on the integrity of that structure. And so in good city planning, in the spirit of that, we wanted to address and understand the integrity of that river wall. And then you move downriver, and we have what we call non-urban sections, and that's the slurry-capped, it's some riprap stone beneath it, river wall sections. Well, the flooding hasn't been too forgiving in those areas. And we've seen a lot of compromises with the river wall in those sections. So compound that with all of the passive park space that we have along the riverfront. We knew, as studies and as other communities have experienced, that if you don't look at activating some of that passive space, that public space, you're not going to see redevelopment on the private commercial space. So it's sort of putting a dollar in to get dollars out on the private surrounding properties. And so that can be said of the downtown, more urban section, as well as more of the residential and other areas as you go downriver. And so we pursued that project. It was a 6-month project that kicked off this last spring. In fact, we just got our final report from the consultant on their review of the river wall. And, early look at that indicates that the river wall is safe and sound, and there's obviously maintenance that needs to be done to it to preserve the integrity as we go forward. But by and large, we're not looking at a reconstruction of the river wall, which is a great thing for us because we weren't sure. And then as we move downriver, some of the other designs incorporated more of rip wrapping and things to keep the bank at bay, because there's some sections of the former Elks building that on the East River Bank, that the river bank is eroding into the river, and we need to do something about that. Obviously, it impacts the street and the curb line behind it, as well as the underground infrastructure. So it's all connected to a much more complex look at the riverfront. On the surface, though, our objective was to create energy and create ambition for a really neat waterfront, one that makes Wisconsin Rapids as attractive or more attractive maybe than other communities that haven't utilized their best asset in their natural resources, such as the river in our situation.
Okay, but that $9 million figure that everybody keeps quoting,
plan was that we needed to get the total price tag, all in, what this would cost. Number one, it's a long-range plan. We view it as up to a 10-year plan, that it would have a shelf life of probably 10 years, that we needed something to be able to take in front of take in front of investors, take in front of the business community and others to say, does this make sense for the city to invest in for the community's future? And the response has been, from realtors to business owners to others, that if Wisconsin Rapids doesn't climb out of its shell, so to speak, what are we going to have to claim our future for? And so the project is intended to be fully led and spent by taxpayers. In fact, very small amounts of it. We have city labor crews that we've got to find work for on an annual basis. Obviously, the weather is showing that we're not pushing snow, but we've got people on the payroll. What can we do to prioritize the available labor force, possibly to work on some of these projects? One of the elements was aquatics in the Demetz Park space. The plan is to include and incorporate a splash pad, which would be outdoor aquatics. So we're addressing a need there. Demetz Park, for example, as well. We've got an under-bridge connection to get residents and pedestrians and bicyclists safely underneath the expressway, as we've done on the West Bank. We haven't done the same on the East Bank. Well, we've had at least one traffic situation where a child was hit by a motorist, and right at that intersection. There's been others across town, but it reminds us of the need for us to not only think about cars and vehicles, but to think about alternative modes of transportation. Folks that are wanting to come to the north from the south of the expressway in the neighborhoods down there, and vice versa. So a lot of aspects addressed. It's not all pretty designs and fun features. There's a lot of practical enhancements to the Riverfront, from ventilation to pedestrian safety and others that are addressed in the plan.
Okay, that's why I wanted to get that up. But we got a caller who's been patiently waiting. Right. And good morning. You're on the Morning Magazine with Mayor Vruwink. Your question or comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on the county buying the Riverblock building. I think as a Wood County taxpayer, I think it was a good deal. Otherwise, where are you going to find a building with close proximity to the courthouse, and with their space needs study that they did, and they possibly could have been spending at least $25 million to put up a brand new building. And as everybody knows, when you get into a construction project, $5 million, and probably wouldn't have covered the cost. So as a taxpayer of Wood County, I think the Wood County board did the right thing. The other thing I'd like to comment on, I understand, and I don't know if the mayor is aware of this or he can comment on it, that River Cities Access was taping the Wood County board meeting yesterday, and the audio was not on or whatever. I'd like to know if the mayor was aware of that or has heard about that, but I think that's unfortunate.
I know the system. They have a kind of old type of a system in that courthouse we're plugging in, and I don't know if it was.
It was all revitalized. I thought it was all updated when they redid it.
Jesse says it was a mistake. It was there was a human error. Okay?
Okay. Well, all right.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I know the microphones in the courthouse were not cooperating yesterday. And the system was very annoying as a public commenter. It was frustrating. So I'm sorry to hear that the recording of the audio wasn't on. Jesse here is claiming responsibility. I guess is safely to say, Jesse, for that error. Hey, human error. We're not robots. We got to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more. And you're invited to call at 715-424-2600 or pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. The magazine, as always, is brought to you by Comfort Air.
Good morning, and welcome back to The Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thanks again, Jerry. Welcome back, everybody, to today's program on AM 1320 WFHR.com and rccamedia.org. They're here digitally recording our conversation with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink, which you can view online in high definition, rccamedia.org, or in high definition on Solaris cable system and in standard def on charters. Let's talk a little bit about what happened at the Common Council last night. First off, you folks in District 1 have a new alderperson, Lee Tao, formerly took office last night.
Took the oath of office. Formerly Alderman Chad Worrell, the outgoing alderman, will be available in January for us to thank him for his efforts and appreciation for his work to better his district.
He wasn't at last night?
Right, he was unable, due to a schedule conflict, wasn't able to be there. But Lee Tao did take the oath of office last night, and so we were pleased to welcome Lee. Lee's been a long-time district resident of District 1. He's employed by Paper City Savings in town, and has he's been involved in a number of community efforts. He's been involved in the Tao clan very, very much since in recent years, and so actively engaged in the community's efforts to do different things. So we're excited to have Lee join us as well.
Some of the items that the council took action on last night that you wanted to...
the Industrial Development Commission meeting, which doesn't meet often. but did meet again last night did meet last week to approve action to sell a property actually just to the north of here, 1.7 acres of city-owned property to Manila Gorilla LLC. That folks would recognize that property as there's a Nakusa Papers sign out front of the building. And then we did give them an option, 5.4 acres of remaining city property that borders 25th Avenue here for possible expansion. And we gave them 18 months to exercise that option. And I know that they're seeing an uptick in business in the community, and so they're hoping to expand here. They're kind of a distribution business. They do umbrella and Smart Monkey Toys is kind of a product that goes in and out of their doors, and they've got some other tenants as well there. And so we're excited that to see their growth. It's one of the more recently constructed buildings of warehouse capacity, and they're out of space, so that would necessitate their need for growth as well as to accommodate potentially some other tenants that are looking for space. So that really good action and positive action last night that the council took.
I want to get to this next caller, and then I want to talk about the city pool and the Y, etc. And you're up next. You're on the air with Mayor Vruwink.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Thanks for taking my call. I'm curious. I have a number of teenagers that I know, and I'm getting asked about, the skate park. And obviously we haven't had much in the way of the weather and the snow that we normally would at this time. Is there a reason that we can't keep the skate park open while there's not snow?
It's a great question, and I appreciate the call. We did extend the opening of the park this year longer than we normally did, and that was a mild fall. But when the temperatures drop to a certain point, the surface actually gets brittle, and so the Parks Department has determined that there actually has been some premature damage done to the park when the weather gets really cold, and so that's typically the freezing temperatures at night is when they close. It's not so much the daytime temperatures; it's actually the temperature of the equipment and that in the ground that they're concerned about. But I appreciate the question, and unfortunately, what's to be seen by all of us are the daytime temperatures. We'd like to keep it open, but we did extend it as far as we could this year in terms of its season.
Okay, I will pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Very good question. Yeah, I wouldn't know. So basically, it can cause damage to the concrete and
the bowl in particular. Yep. It gets brittle. It's like any other material that because of the nature of skateboarding and grinding on some equipment that it gets brittle.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and there was a Finance and Property Committee meeting in December earlier this month where the committee discussed negotiations regarding an aquatics center partnership with YMCA.
Yeah.
Where are we with that? What about the West Side Pool? And the question I get from folks around here, the West Side is an area with folks that have economic challenges, to be blunt about it. And if we put an aquatic center or something too far away, there won't be a way for those kids to get to this unless there's some kind of transportation provided. That's been an issue brought up to me. So I said I would bring it up to you.
Yeah. Well, I'll address maybe the first piece was to be the Mead Pool's fate.
Yeah.
The City Council in a meeting in November, the Committee of the Whole, sent staff in the direction that they shouldn't pursue any further capital investments in Mead. What that translates to is that it's likely that Mead Pool will not open in 2016. That wasn't their final action. That was sort of their general consensus of the council, given the fact that it would require at least six figures, possibly only for one season. So they figured that those dollars could be redirected, that would be spent on that, to some other alternatives of maybe outdoor aquatics play. So that hasn't been fully decided. That's something in January that they expect to. But as far as the YMCA question, we still continue to discuss on a weekly basis, actually, aspects of a partnership. And it would be more than a partnership. It would be a marriage because if we participated in some form, it's likely that it would be a long-term partnership. But there are a variety of ways we could partner on a shorter term. Their facility conceptually is all indoor as an aquatics center. There could possibly be, as it was in the previous sort of concept that was put out to the community, and that was 3 bodies of water, possibly with one with being a splash play area, one being competitive swim lanes, and then a therapy pool and whirlpool and things. So from a standpoint of an indoor center, it's a much more scaled down, less recreational version of what others are used to in areas like the Dells and others, but it would have elements of it. It would have slides and things. So we're discussing with them, what would the resident access look like? How many hours? When would that time be available for the community to swim? The city would have to bond for any access, much like the county bonded to purchase the river block. So we're right now sort of in a position of what's the aquatic center proposed cost? What does that look like? What would access look like? And when can we almost guarantee that our residents, whether they're older adults or young families and children, be able to use an indoor facility? Obviously, there's benefits of it being available 12 months out of the year, and part for the city, the benefit of the fact that they wouldn't have to operate the facility, they wouldn't have to staff it, they wouldn't have to administer it. So there are benefits in that regard. We have to do something regardless, right? Whether we do a full-on partnership with the YMCA and residents have access to the facility to some degree, or we do a variety where we do a variation of a partnership and maybe still do something outdoor. And where the city council's at on the question, and where staff, I would say, are, is what are residents' preferences? We don't have a real good, like the caller on the skate park, right? We don't know what are on people's minds related to aquatics. So the city council took action also last night to initiate a survey to acquire resident perspective and resident opinions and preferences related to aquatics. And it's going to cover 5 areas. A couple of the areas include financing, right? Anything is going to cost the city money, right? Capital dollars and millions of dollars. It's not a couple $100,000 and we call it a day. Any sort of partnership or any sort of facility on our own is going to require $3 to $5 million, a general ballpark for any aquatics. Outdoor pool, indoor facility, all about the same range cost. The second component that we're looking for resident input and feedback on is, what do people prefer? Do they prefer the city only do something outdoors and forget about indoor and they'll take care of it on their own? Or if they want to use a facility, they'll arrange that? So we want to ask that question, indoor versus outdoor. The other question in our area we want to get feedback on is, how do they feel about the city partnering with having it's a YMCA facility, but yet having access to aspects of that facility. So those are 3 of the areas. Other areas include, if people had an option, what would they choose above? What amenities would they like in a facility? We talked about some of them loosely here, but those are the aspects we want to hear. We feel that an indoor pool, indoor aquatic center, is really much an economic development and attractiveness play from a competitiveness standpoint. The outdoor is very much a quality of life effort. And City of Merrill, for example, just more recently did a center of an outdoor capacity, City of Oshkosh. So we've got some good examples of facilities that are more recent term to compare and look at.
Is this something we should partner up with more than just the Y, but with other municipalities in the area? Because Port Edwards, for instance, is looking at similar issues with their village pool.
Yeah. The city's going into it with the mindset that the city would negotiate a residential or a public access agreement, and then possibly other municipalities could come underneath the city's agreement, because possibly the city could acquire or put front the entire capital for an aquatics facility, and then we would allow in some form of an agreement, similar agreement that we would have with the Y, to partner with other municipalities. So it's entirely possible. We're not going into it with the mindset that we must have others participate, because that could really delay the process. We don't have a lot of time to spend on this issue. I think back as a teenager, not all that long ago, but as a teenager, to this debate was happening under Mayor Virginski, and I remember those days and was frustrated with sort of the impasse that happened and marred the city council. And I think this city council, and I'm committed to getting this issue done and getting it done in the spring. We can't delay. We can't spend years talking about it again. It's got to be weeks and months, and no more than that.
And this survey, when will it be going out?
They approved it last night. We're going to spend the holiday is crafting the survey and the questions, and we fully expect it to go out the first Monday in January after the holidays, so January 4th or right around that week, the first week, and it'll be a 3 to 4 week survey with some public meetings and other things, and then we expect to get results in early February.
How will people acquire the survey? Like the housing survey online?
A little bit different. We're actually, the housing study is the city's leading that effort. We're doing all the outreach. Survey research is actually, there's going to be some telephone surveys, so it's not all that different if folks got contacted for the market research project that the YMCA did. It's actually the same firm. So using some of the similar elements of that, calling city residents that have landlines, but obviously acquiring other means to get access to people, because if they don't have a landline, they're excluded. So there's going to be a fair amount of in-person surveys. We want a full demographic view on this issue, and so partially we're going to educate through the form of the survey, but we're also going to ask for their feedback.
Okay, so if you get a phone call and someone's asking you about aquatic issues in the Wisconsin Rapids area, don't be surprised. We got to take
the city's listening. I mean, that's the point.
That's the point. Yeah, and people say, I have a view on something. Well, here's your chance to give your view, just like with the housing survey as well. We got to take one more break before we wrap it up. You're listening to the Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and WFHR.com. You still have time to visit and ask any questions with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. Back with more right after this. Welcome back to the Morning Magazine and our monthly Wisconsin Rapids visit with Mayor Zach Vruwink. And let's see. Let's talk. I wanted to talk about a referral I saw here into Public Works. And it was Alderman Koth. Mm-hmm. Large trucks in residential areas. That's kind of an interest to me because I brought this up to you before. On 2 Mile Avenue, every once in a while, we see a Walmart truck semi going down the street. Mm-hmm. And now I know with the housing down the street, sometimes it's contractors or construction-related equipment, but every once in a while, I'll see a Walmart truck going past down to full truck and trailer and everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, that's not supposed to be going down here. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about that. Are there other areas of the city where we've been having problems with truck paying attention to the signs?
Well, a common one that I've gotten feedback and comments from, and as Alderperson Colt as well, and that's Baker.
That's been for years.
Yeah, well, and it has history, right? And part of the problem is, in the advent of GPS systems, that a lot of these old GPSs are still in use in trucks. And not to say that they have the wrong information from the start, but they haven't done it. And so they're sending people down these routes that aren't necessarily truck routes. And so if you're not a town trucker, the locals know better and should know better. We've done some enforcement with the PD on the issue because folks that are in residential areas, their houses shake. They're very concerned about their property. In fact, there was a gentleman that spoke at Public Works that indicated there was some damage. He was on Washington Street. Of course, it happens, as you say, on 2 Mile, Walmart semi that's heading probably to Walmart to do deliveries, gets caught up on some of these residential streets. But the long-term view on this subject is there is some guidance in the manual that all transportation and city engineers folks look to about how you better identify truck routes and non-truck routes. And I've been to Marshfield. If you drive through Marshfield, you can see that their street signs, their names of their streets are different colors. And I never knew the significance of it. I do now. That yellow and green are their differentiators, that there are yellow, I believe, for truck routes and green for non-truck routes. So drivers can quickly identify if they're on a truck route or a non-truck route. Of course, there's also the local truck traffic that those that live in all districts in particular, a lot of local deliveries to RCH and some of the manufacturing and warehousing up there. So it's a difficult issue, but point being is the city is looking at addressing this. We did allocate some budget dollars for some better signage and possibly to address this issue through some signage improvements, and then to update a lot of the truck or non-truck route signs. If you drive around, are very faded, and we haven't budgeted for it to update them. So I'm confident that we'll make some progress there. It's just hard to say that we're going to combat every one of the situations because, like you say, those trucks still end up making a wrong turn, and they've got to figure out a way to get out.
I didn't think of the GPS thing, but that's an interesting technical issue.
Yeah. So we've been talking with employers, the in particular, to say, hey, the city is concerned about this. We don't want you to get fined or ticketed because of an error, but get your GPS systems updated.
The other issue, and I was talking with a business person recently, we were talking about the expressway and how sometimes the traffic is miserably slow for a variety of reasons. And one thing I think a lot of people don't realize in downtown, that's a 40-mile-an-hour speed zone.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of signage telling you that this is a 40-mile-an-hour speed zone. There are certain areas where you have signage, but like, for instance, if I'm turning left onto the expressway bridge down there from the hospital on 2nd Street there, if I'm making a turn left onto the expressway, there's no signage.
Until much further down.
I don't even know if there is.
That stretches, especially if you had to... It's kind of a speed zone.
So just wondering if we need to put a few more speed signs up to let people know what the speed zone is.
It's a good consideration. I'll take it back.
Yeah, okay. I just thought, Hey, you're on the air with Mayor Vruwink.
Yes, Your Honor, Carl. Just a small item that kind of catches my eye once in a while. I believe there's a sign ordinance that no sign should be in the city, which is, between the sidewalk and the curb, and yet there seems like there's dozens of these disposable signs for employment agencies and tarot card readers scattered about the city.
I've seen some of those myself, yeah.
I don't know if could be some bite in the ordinance to prevent that. And that's just my short comment. Thank you.
Okay, hey, thank you.
Yeah, in fact, the most recent signage update only allowed and actually tightened the restrictions on those. We've actually had folks, our ordinance control officer just pluck them because they're in the right of way, and sometimes they're in vision triangles, and obviously they're an eyesore for those of us that are concerned about the appearance of our community. But yeah, we do have good ordinance on that. In fact, that's kind of a constant battle, as you say, from employment. Staffing agencies are common for that. It's out of garage sale season now, so not so much with the garage sale signs, but as the caller indicated. But we do have the ordinance that tightens it up, so if there's a location that you want to report, certainly do that, and that can be done via our city smartphone app. If you've got a smartphone and you want to download C-Click Fix, C-Click Fix is the name of the app, you can report it, and the ordinance control officer will get the location, and then they can take it. Otherwise, they can call City Hall and Planning and Zoning or the Ordinance Control individual and get that reported as well.
Okay, so there is some teeth to this. I'll just take this thing, right?
And if they're repeat offenders, of course, Solaris Media Shower was one that I had gotten some calls on when they launched Media Shower. A lot of folks were proud of maybe launching Media Shower, and it was a great launch for them, but those were temporary signs, and those were not allowed by them for a certain period of time. Of course, all the folks that were kind of out of contractor season with roofs and some of those work, some of that work, but we also don't allow after a certain period of time those signs. So we need eyes and ears, and the resident obviously indicated that he's observed them, and so we need to know about them.
Yeah, because they do look, they're a distraction, and they can get into a video. Well, I guess with that, we should mention that the community is invited to attend a special holiday event at City Hall.
Right.
Coming up, I'm trying to find my thing.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. There we go.
Evening at City Hall.
4 to 6 or something.
Yeah, public is invited down and visit with city staff and alderpersons and committee and commission members that may be on hand. And so we want to spread holiday cheer and wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
And if you could, bring a non-perishable food item, and I'll go to the local food bank as well. Well, Your Honor, to you and everybody at City Hall, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thanks, Carl. You as well.
Okay, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Morning Magazine on AM 13 and WFHR.com and RCCAmedia.org.